Hi everybody, welcome to the Aspiring Entrepreneur. I'm your host Hamza Chowdhury, and in this video I'd like to talk to you about the Apple stock. We had the iPhone event today. There was a lot of great exciting news to learn more about what the phone's about and the future of the iPhone technology. Before I dive into the stock, I'd like to ask a favor of you. If you could hit that like and subscribe button to the channel, really help support the channel. We offer 100% free content, and people like yourself who may be looking for updates and things like that could find the channel a lot easier. So thank you for your support, and I appreciate it. So let's just jump right into it. So today we had the iPhone event, and what we had sort of leading up to it yesterday was this massive gap up. And I mentioned in the previous videos that we had a breakout coming into Apple, and if you look at the previous videos, we talked about the confirmation. So leading up to Monday's price action on Friday, we had talked about how we traded above the VWAP, and we were essentially tied into a range of 116.50 and around 116, and then towards the last hour of the day we finally broke into it and closed around 118 post market. And then as expected, we gapped up, and then yesterday I mentioned in a very early video around 2 in the morning pre-market that I expected Apple to sell off at open and then sort of continue its momentum. Now, instead of sort of hanging out in the 120, 121s, it actually ended up gapping up a lot higher, and it really pushed in anticipation of today's event. So if you were someone who's been sort of following my videos and watched our calls, we talked about, buying a ton of the calls up here. You could obviously go long as well. And we talked about how I swung a small position expecting this gap up, but you can see that those calls were just money yesterday. I mean, we're talking about 3-4 points on each contract as this thing gapped up further. So in anticipation of this event, there was a lot of hype. And what we saw today was, as we gapped up, we actually gapped down. And as the bell was getting closer to ring, we could tell that it was sort of selling off. So taking a good short position, if you recognize that this was downtrending, and you can see it was trading below this SMA line, it was just I believe it was look at that, from a high of 125 to a low of 121. So guys, in a 15-minute candle, that's a 4-point drop. And realistically, for the stock, it was actually within the first couple minutes. It was just a sudden drop, right? So this is a 1-minute candle. So we had 1, 2, 3, essentially 4 minutes. We had this massive 5-point drop. So if you were able to short the stock, you saw that it was selling off. Again, it was a solid trade for a short. You captured that, and you could have made money essentially both sides. So you obviously, if you still had some calls, you could have hopefully got rid of them before open. And of course the shorts had it covered, and they bought this thing back up to just sell it off as we got closer to the 10 o'clock Pacific time event, which again, it had a lot of exciting things, and those are things that we'll see in the future. And it's the reason why we should look at the long-term future of Apple. And we know that iPhone is about 45% of its revenues, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I'm glad they did an event specifically dedicated to the iPhone and the future of it. So just going back again, you can look back at our previous videos. We talked about how Apple had its high pre-split here, sold off, and then the people here I mentioned in the video yesterday. My concern was that once we got to the 125s, we'd have an enormous amount of selling pressure, because imagine that as this thing was selling off, all of the people that were originally, we had this consolidation, we had this bump up, and then we had this massive selling pressure. All these people who are buying in this area have been waiting for some time to sell Apple, or to for the stock to come up. And so all of these people were essentially waiting for Apple to come back into the 125-ish range. And so what we talked about was this wedge that we had created based on the recent lower lows and the high point. And then what we also solidified over several videos is this 112.60 range. And so what we had was this break of the Bollinger Band, and as you can see, it's on the upper band, which indicates a bullish movement. But you can see the channel was actually relatively pretty short, and it really felt like we were waiting for quite a while for this consolidation to wrap up, to have a breakout, which we got. But when we had this breakout, it didn't necessarily mean we were going to just sort of keep going on. I had talked to some people who thought the event was going to lead us to 130. And one of my best advice, and this may sort of come off the wall for some people, is in stock trading, think about what the market makers are doing, right? They're soaking you up here when you're buying, holding these positions, and then they don't even give you a chance here at open to even sell, right? I mean, there's all this selling pressure, people cashing out their profits the day of the event. So they pump it up, right? And then they short it, and then they sort of squeeze you out. And so my best advice, and I was telling my wife this, is that try to do not what most people want to do, right? Most people think that Apple's going up, so I got to buy. Yes, we wanted the breakout. We got the breakout. Now let's steal our profits. Don't get married to the stock just yet. I mean, again, if you're in a long-term portfolio, no problem, right? We know this thing's going to always come back up. But, like I mentioned, the selling pressure in the past year, we got the breakout, we cashed out. The problem is that people want to follow the masses, and they think that there's a big event, the stock's going to go up, and up. And yes, it went up. However, the day of the event, it dumped. So don't get married to the stock. Don't hold on to it, and lose all the profits that you worked so hard to gain, especially when you know that, things like this are just really like it's market makers, right? They're going to absorb you into the stock, and then they're going to dump it. And that's why I think part of the mentality and some of the best advice I can give is try to do the exact opposite of what you see everyone else doing. So when you see everyone else wanting to buy, and again, we expected the breakout, realize that, okay, we've had the breakout, let's sell it off, because Apple's not going to just make a 5-10 point move without selling off. So what's next? So now that we've sort of rejected this, and you can see that this candle in both volume and the candle itself is sort of overtaken our gains from yesterday. We mentioned in the last video, right, that what we see now is a bounce on this line right here. So what we see and what I see is a bounce on this line right here around the 117.50s 118 range here. So we've had a lot of consolidation here. If we look at the 15-minute chart, this is where I see the stock going next, is getting a lot of support here at this top range, which let me see if I can get that to you guys. You guys can see that here. It's right here at this top here, right around the 117.50 118 range. And so what we said is previous resistance is now going to be future support. So what was resistance before was this sort of 118 level, and we had a lot of bounces where we rejected most recently, and now we broke out. So what I expect is that we'll get support around the 117.50 118 range, where you can now go long as we sort of gap back up and try to reclaim some of these gains. And as we sort of get, again, a lot of that selling pressure out of the way, we can now start moving back up. Again, always going to be bullish on the stock. This is simply a correction and a consolidation. We know it's uptrending, so we know it's going to go back up. But we also know that this event was purely just a pump and then a dump. So what we want to do now is use the previous resistance as support and get back in at the 117.50 118 range. And then, like I said, we'll watch the stock and see what it wants to do as it goes. But we can see now that the 20-day, you can see that in this dotted line is uptrending. We can see that the Bollinger Band with the uptrend is definitely uptrending. And we can see, again, the MACD we talked about is uptrending. And we can also see the RSI, right? Just with today's correction, it did come back down. So we're not quite overbought like we were back here leading up to the price action up to the split. So with that said, guys, I hope that's helpful. I know this video was a little bit longer than the previous videos, but I encourage you to watch my previous ones, just talking about as we sort of made these moves, just so you can kind of understand the step-by-step process that I do, and looking at these at the price action to kind of know what I think the stock's going to do. With that said, please drop a like and a comment below, and I'd love to help you out if you have any questions or comments with anything I've said. And I wish you guys the best of luck, and take care, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.